Sonaro presents the Chisme Corner with V. Rivera, the podcast where cultura, motherhood, and pop culture collide. I'm V. Rivera, your host and your honorary homegirl, bringing you raw combos, healing moments, and a little bit of spicy chisme every week. Catch the Chisme Corner with V. Rivera, an original podcast series from Sonaro, wherever you listen to podcasts.
I looked in the rearview mirror, and there was a silhouette sitting behind me, faceless, with long hair and a presence that wouldn't let me breathe.
Very good evening, community. We hope you listen to us in the best mood, especially if you're a rideshare driver or taxi driver, if your job takes you behind the wheel, because today we're going to a new compilation of stories about these types of close encounters with the supernatural. Also remember that if you're having a bad day, it's mandatory that you leave everything outside for a moment, even if it's just because here those worries cannot enter. Listen calmly, as I promise when it's time to return to those pending matters, it will be from another perspective. For now, you only need to worry about one thing. Just one. That you don't hear a strange noise. Something that doesn't come from these stories. You only need to worry about not becoming the next protagonist of Tales of the Night. Hello, Uriel. I'm Alejandra, and at one stage of my life, I was a night taxi driver. I truly loved driving at night, and around that time I discovered you on Spotify and became addicted to working while listening to Tales of the Night. My colleagues at the base, there at the Sevilla Metro in Juarez neighborhood, always told me the same thing when they heard what I had on. You won't understand until something happens to you. You're calling the bad things to yourself, and honestly, being stubborn, I didn't listen to them. Since I was little, I felt a fascination with the supernatural and, well, eventually it happened. I had a client that I picked up every Wednesday at Plaza Mediana in Polanco and took her to her house, near the Ecatepec Metro. That day we were coming as always, chatting. It was raining, so I put on music. Whenever I had passengers, I would play music, but as soon as they got off, I would go back to listening to you. We arrived at her house, we said goodbye, and just before getting off she told me, Ale, take care of yourself. I feel the night is strange. I just smiled at her, thanked her, and returned to my base. I took Central Avenue, and right at the height of Rio de los Remedios metro station, something happened to me that I will never forget. Suddenly, there was a horrible smell like something rotten. And at the same time, I felt without any doubt what it feels like when someone gets in the taxi. That small movement of the seat, that change in the air. I looked in the rearview mirror. I saw a woman sitting behind me. You couldn't see her face. It was just a silhouette, but you could tell she had long hair, very white skin, and something I don't know how to explain. A feeling of danger, as if something terrible was about to happen. I was paralyzed. I don't know how I didn't crash. My legs felt like jelly, and the only thing I could think to do was say out loud, "Get out of my taxi. You're not welcome here. I didn't let you get in." I kept driving. I focused on the avenue and didn't look back again. It wasn't until I reached the junction with the 608 and anterior circuit, and in a more illuminated area, that I clearly felt how the seat moved down. It moved. The smell disappeared. Everything changed. I turned off the car and tried to breathe. I didn't know whether to cry, scream, or just pretend nothing happened. After a while, I finally calmed down at least a little. And I decided to continue to the base. When I arrived, one of my colleagues was waiting for me with coffee. He looked at me and said, "What's wrong with you? You're pale. It looks like you saw a ghost." And yes, community, I saw it. I felt it. I could smell it. It finally happened to me. I don't know what it was, but it happened to me. It took me several days to be able to tell it, several days to accept it. But here I am, still listening to you, as always. Only now I'm also part of your stories. Thank you for so much, for accompanying those of us who work at night, and for giving me the courage to share with people outside my circle of trust something I hadn't dared to tell. But I know, I'm sure that this community is the right place. To one who's driving around, who's taking people from one side of the city to the other, things always end up happening that many will never believe. It's an everyday thing meeting very good people and very bad people, yes, but also things that only happen from time to time. Things that change your life forever. All taxi drivers have at least one ghost story. I want to tell you what happened to me. It's been almost 3 years since I discovered your program. I always put it on without fail, already at night, on the last trips. Because despite everything, the stories don't scare me. On the contrary, knowing that I'm not alone, that there are more and more people who believe in the same thing, who have lived the same as me, that feeling of being accompanied somehow. I swear there was a moment in my life where I felt ridiculous for telling these experiences. When I felt that people thought that believing in the paranormal was absurd, ignorant. And if you were one of those, just ask your parents, your grandparents, the people you trust most, people who would have no reason to lie to you. You're going to find stories, and eventually, you'll come to one that simply has no explanation that you can't debate. When you find it, believe me, you'll be closer to experiencing something yourself. You just have to be willing to believe. Some of the strongest things that have happened to me, I think, have the same origin. Nobody told me this. I haven't spoken with any expert, but it's a conclusion I came to myself. It's been 20 years since the first of them happened. 20 years that have gone by like water. I went to drop off a lady at the airport, and a man with a suitcase approached me to get in the taxi. I told him that I wasn't allowed to pick him up there, that area was only for airport taxis. They didn't want to take me. They themselves told me to ask you. He told me, and I immediately understood why. Because he was going far, very far, to 0330 from there. I asked him why the central office didn't take him to catch a bus, and he told me he was very tired, that he preferred to pay just to arrive on time. I told him a high fare, quite high, just so he would say no, but he accepted right away. Right there he took out his wallet and gave me half. We were going to a very small, very poor town, but he seemed to be coming from the United States. He had dollars. Returning home, maybe. I had worked all night, and all I was thinking about was getting home. Resting. But I couldn't say no to him. Looking at him carefully, I noticed he was very thin. Too much. Like sick. He must have weighed barely about 40 kilos. He wore one of those fedora hats, but I managed to see that he had no hair on the sides. By the ears, nothing. Not even the dots from shaving. He didn't have eyebrows either. Well, let's go then. I'm going to do my best to arrive before dawn, I told him. And the man just smiled and patted me on the back as a signal to move forward. I knew how to get to that town. In theory, I just asked him to give me directions when we were there. You can tell right away if the passenger is going to chat with you or prefers silence. And since I noticed he was very serious, I thought he was going to sleep. But no, there he went seriously, looking out the window, but completely silent. I put a program on the radio to feel accompanied. That was my tales of the night from before. But as soon as we got on the highway, the signal was lost, and the only thing accompanying me was the sound of the engine. The good thing is that I really like driving at night, and the tranquility of a solitary highway was contrasting with the places, with the ugly areas where the city sometimes takes me. It was a completely silent trip, but peaceful, with that man who wasn't sleepy, but I understood also didn't have the strength to chat, to pay attention to me. A little more than 3 hours later, at a deviation without a sign or name, the man touched my back again and told me it was there. I had never reached this town, but I had passed by the highway many times. I knew there was a junction ahead that, yes, had the name of the town, an entrance much safer, illuminated. But he told me to trust him, that this access was even safer. Dirt road, but well maintained. Trust me, nothing's going to happen. The other way people who aren't from the town arrive, and that's known, he told me. I decided to trust him. He was the local, or at least that's what it seemed. It wasn't much longer before dawn, but the fog started coming in. I went slowly. The road was perfectly even despite being dirt, but you couldn't see anything and it was very narrow. Barely, and very carefully 2 cars would have fit. Nothing more. We advanced about 5 kilometers when he told me to stop. That we had arrived. I couldn't see anything but fog ahead. I didn't understand. I felt like we were still in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the road. But he just paid me the rest of the trip. He got out, took his suitcase, and walked toward the fog. That's how I saw him disappear. And a little later, I advanced behind him to look for where to turn around. There I realized that, indeed, we had arrived at the town. We were right at the entrance. You could barely see anything because of the fog, but I was in front of some normal houses. I turned around in front of one that had a light on. A very humble house. I wondered if my passenger had gone in there. It was the only one with a light in everything I could see. I wanted to think about a mother's happiness, maybe seeing her son after a long time. Well, a dying passenger who had wanted to see his town for the last time. I don't know if it happens to other taxi drivers, but you make up many stories in your head. Stories about the passengers. I turned around and went back into the fog, on that dirt road, looking to reach the highway. I advanced a bit faster. It seemed like it was already dawning, although the fog continued to be dense. You could at least see about 20 meters. The car began to disperse. That's why I managed to see a figure walking in the direction of the highway too. I decreased speed so as not to scare her. But as I approached and saw that it was a lady already very bent over by age, I stopped completely to talk to her. Her clothes were like people from town. "Ma'am, are you going to the highway? Should I give you a ride?" The lady stopped and smiled at me as if thanking me, with surprised eyes. Her wide smile looked dark. She had no teeth left, but she stayed like that, smiling as if frozen. She didn't move absolutely not a millimeter. "Don't you want me to take you?" "It's dangerous because of the fog," I said, but she remained like a statue, really, completely motionless, smiling. It started to make me very uncomfortable. She was surely mentally ill. I was grateful she hadn't gotten in. I rolled up my window and moved forward. Further ahead, the fog became thick again, now even thicker than on the way there. Suddenly, after having advanced a couple of kilometers, I finally saw the highway nearby, a few meters ahead of me. But I couldn't see if cars were coming on either side, so I had to stop completely. I had to cross to the opposite lane, but I didn't dare do it without being able to see at least if something was approaching. I rolled down the window to try to listen and see if I could hear a truck or bus approaching, but I couldn't even determine from which of the 2 directions, so I simply waited there, next to the highway. The engine was heard getting closer and closer. By reflex, I looked in the rearview mirror, and behind me, approaching quickly, came the same hunchbacked lady, running very, very fast. A lady that a couple of minutes ago I had left 3 kilometers behind. I accelerated, without seeing almost anything, and I reached my lane to return to the city and heard the horn of a truck as if it was about to hit me. And I thought the worst. I expected the worst, the impact, but I pressed the accelerator to the floor. Then, in very little, a minute at most, I finally passed the cloud of fog and the sun hit my face. I think never in my life had I felt like that, as if I had just woken up from a dream. And that's what my wife told me, who was still alive back then. When I got home, that's what happened to me for working so much, falling asleep, that those 14-hour shifts were going to kill me, that I had to learn to rest, that was part of the job. There with her, I slept for a while, and when I woke up, that strange, deep fear no longer felt the same way. I convinced myself that surely that vision in the rearview mirror was mental confusion between tiredness, fog, and fear. And despite feeling better, my wife didn't let me go to work. She told me that was a sign that I had to stay at least one day to restore energy. I think I had months without taking a real day off, even a few days off. Usually I would go out for a couple of hours to catch trips, but that day they just didn't let me. Until the next day. After breakfast, I went out and took my first trip. I put on my radio programs and started working. Already at night. On the last trips of the day, as always, at some point during the shift I ended up at the airport, dropping off a couple who were going very late, stressed, about to miss their flight. And to top it off, when they got out I noticed they left a bag, so I stayed waiting for them to come back for it. At that moment, a taxi stopped right in front of mine. A person got out, took his suitcase, put on his hat, and he looked very familiar to me. He looked strangely similar to the person I took to that town, but without that extreme thinness, with eyebrows, even with a very thin mustache, like from another time, like from the Titanic era. The gentleman took off his hat and greeted me with a smile. I recognized those eyes under the hat. I saw the shadow of hair beginning to grow, but it was him. I had no doubt, although it couldn't be possible. It was the same man I saw 2 days ago, but now he could weigh at least 25 or 30 kilos more. He looked completely healthy, but dressed in the same suit that now fit him so loosely. I swear by my wife's memory that it was the same person. When he saw that I didn't respond to the greeting, and I suppose he noticed my scared face, he simply smiled. He put on his hat and headed toward the interior of the airport. Until today, so many years later, I don't know who that person was, what he went to do, nor what happens in that town, where truthfully, thank heaven I haven't had any need to go. I only know that it's increasingly empty, that it almost has no people left. Hello, Uriel. My name is Saul, and I share this story that an uncle who was a taxi driver for many years told me. He doesn't usually talk much about things like this, but this time he told me I could share it. My uncle worked in Puebla, and at that time had a very marked routine. He always closed his workday with the same trip. He would pick up a couple at 10 p.m. at their business near the ecological park and take them to their house in San Alejandro, which was his last trip of the day. And besides, that was already close to his house, so it never occurred to him not to do it. That Friday, like so many others, everything seemed normal. On the way to San Alejandro, my uncle noticed something strange. A man arguing with another taxi driver on a corner. The shouting caught his attention, but he didn't stop. A little further ahead, already close to dropping off the couple, he encountered a group of young people in the street. They were shouting drunkenly and seemed quite drugged too. He avoided them carefully. They looked quite aggressive. He dropped off his passengers and prepared to return. On the way back, he saw that group again. They were still there, even more agitated. And a few blocks away, he encountered again the same man from before. The one who was fighting with the taxi driver was now alone, standing on the sidewalk, and when he saw him, he flagged him down. My uncle was already tired, but thought maybe the man wanted to go somewhere nearby, so he rolled down the window to ask him. The guy asked him to take him to Cholula. He said no, that it was very late and that he wasn't going to find anyone to take him there. He warned him to go back, that a block away came a group that looked quite dangerous, but he didn't insist. He said he didn't know where he was, that he had gotten lost, that they had left him there and that the other taxi driver didn't want to take him. He offered more money, whatever it was, but my uncle told him no again and simply continued on his way. He was already going along the diagonal on a stretch where there's pure forest on both sides when he saw a woman standing next to the road. She was crying. She didn't flag him down. She was just there, alone. And because of how slowly the car was going, he saw her very clearly. She was an older lady with short curly hair, well combed. He thought about stopping, but something told him not to get involved. And just when he passed next to her, the car turned off. He tried to start it again, but it didn't respond. And that's when the lady approached his window and spoke to him. "Help me with my son. They're going to kill him." It was a simple phrase, but he felt a fear he had never felt. Everything fell apart on him. She kept crying, repeating it. "Take him. Don't leave him there." He didn't know how, but the car started. He turned around and drove back to the place where he had left that man. He was still there. The group of young people was already coming closer. He shouted for him to get in, and as soon as he did, he took off without looking back. Both went in silence, as if neither knew what to say. When they passed through the stretch where the lady had been, there was no one there anymore. But further ahead, when taking the curve on the straight road to Cholula, he couldn't help it. He looked in the rearview mirror for a second, and 1 second was enough to see that there she was, sitting next to the passenger looking at him, smiling. He was stunned. He could barely keep driving, and when they arrived in Zavaleta, he looked again, and she was no longer there. It was then that the man broke the silence. He asked him not to leave him there, that he didn't know the area, that his friends had left him after a fight at a party, and that he didn't know how to get back. He told him he was very bad and he knew it, to forgive him, that his mother had died just 2 weeks before, and that when he saw that group approaching, the only thing he did was ask her with all his strength to help him. My uncle, scared, asked him what his mother looked like. What he described was exactly the woman from the road. My uncle didn't know what to say. He just listened to him. The young man fell silent and then started crying. My uncle too, although he tried to hide it. He took him to his house. When he got out, he only told him, "Take care of yourself and let your mother rest now." My uncle still remembers that look, the one he saw only for an instant, looking at him from the back seat, as if she were thanking him. Thank you for continuing here, community. Let's see. I don't know if this happens to you. The previous story, I feel like I already knew it. I feel like I had already narrated it, but when I looked for it in my script records in the episodes, I couldn't find it anywhere in the published stories. Could it be deja vu, or could it be that someone had told me a similar story? I don't know, but that happens sometimes when you listen to and read, edit so many stories. Suddenly, it's quite difficult to remember when I told them, or if I told them at all. But the truth is that one of the things I most enjoy about having this project is that wherever I am, with friends, with strangers, with people who have just been introduced to me, they're always going to end up telling me their story, their most incredible tales. Like it gives them confidence to tell me because they know I take all stories with great respect and with much, much, much interest. And several of those stories from very casual conversations do end up here in Tales of the Night. But community, it's time to continue with tonight's episode. The break is over. It's time to continue with more Tales of the Night. This happened to me the first week as a taxi driver. I was new to everything, to the city, to the job, working a night shift. Everything. I was calling by phone because I didn't know the streets well, but I liked it. I felt like I was doing something right. Finally, at the base there was good atmosphere, although everyone was kind of hard on the new guys. They made jokes all the time, and one of the supervisors had a reputation for being the most laid back. That night we were waiting for Trips when he approached me and told me it was my turn to go out and assigned me an address. It didn't sound familiar at all, but as always I went guiding myself by the map. It was a neighborhood not so far from us, but already quite solitary. Very dark. When I arrived at the address, I noticed it was a kind of private street, a little closed street with a gate. It was open, but rusty, as if they hadn't moved it for years. Next to it was a destroyed security booth. It had broken glass, graffiti. There was nobody at the entrance. I went into the private street slowly. All the houses looked abandoned, some with broken windows, others without doors. At the back was a burned house, or rather two stuck together, completely black. The roof half fallen, as if it had collapsed from the fire. I checked the number. It was that one. That was the address. But there was nobody. I turned off the car. I called them to report that there didn't seem to be anyone there, that it was surely the wrong address. But the supervisor told me that by policy I had to wait 5 minutes outside in case someone came out. I got annoyed, but, well, I stayed there. And then I said out loud, "Well, let's see if they hurry up and come out." It was then that a horrible stench hit me. It wasn't garbage or humidity, but like burned hair, like burned flesh. I looked at the house and I seemed to see a bit of smoke. Not much, just a thread that dissolved in the air. I got scared, so I got in the taxi. I started the engine. I was going to leave, but then I saw them. They were coming out through the broken door. Two figures, one tall and one much smaller. They were walking hand in hand, walking toward me. I couldn't see their faces well, but they were completely black. Not like dark clothes, but as if their skin was carbonized. And they gave off smoke. They weren't running. They just walked very slowly, but they came straight toward me. Their eyes, only that could be seen well. White, fixed on me. The stench filled the car. The engine was on and I didn't think twice. I accelerated as if my life depended on it. When I got to the base, I was pale, trembling. Some started laughing. They told me that all the new guys fell for it, that it was a joke, a hazing sending us to that address, that about 10 years ago something horrible had happened there, that the house had been abandoned since then, and that it was said that the entire private street was haunted. But when I told them what I saw, they all fell silent. I told them there was nobody acting, that they didn't scare me with a mask or with screams, that what I saw came out of that house, that it was two burned people, walking, looking at me. And everyone got serious, very serious. Apparently that wasn't part of the joke. I don't work there anymore, but still when I remember that night, the pure smell makes me nauseous and I can feel it as if it had stayed in my nose forever.